See. Hey, Luis.
Ethan, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good, considering.
Considering you should be doing great. You're almost ready for a long vacation.
Exactly.
Time to party.
I can't wait.
I'm kidding.
All right. Yeah, so we are at the end. Thank God. It's been a lot of ups and downs. Hope you enjoyed the course. I want to make sure the last day is not. Basically, we're going to end strong, and we're just going to make sure you do well in the final. So I was going to kind of talk about the questions, not give them to you, but we'll talk about them, and if the students come up with them, that's what happens, right? It'll also be cool because we'll kind of review the semester. So the first day of class was how native is native enough, right? And a lot of these questions are right off the quiz questions. So if you remember the quiz, this finals, you could probably finish it in 20 minutes.
Can we see all of our old quizzes on Canvas? Do you know?
So what you can do is you preview. I have a teacher's perspective, but what I do is I can preview the quiz, and then I print it out, and it'll have all the questions. It may not have the right answer. You might have to go and mark it in there, but that's what I've done. I printed it out.
Right. So I'll go while you're talking.
I'm going to go into Canvas and re-see your old quiz because my last teacher had us study off of our previous quizzes as well for our final.
Perfect. Yeah. So yeah, basically I would do that. So we talked about enrollment, right? That was the first thing we talked about, what it is to be an Indian, the stereotypes. It's important to start off there because most people think we don't exist anymore, considering, we look different. We look African American, white, Mexican. We look all different things. We also look, what you would expect a Kumeyaay person to look like, and on and on. And then we talked about blood quantum and enrollment and all that, and how we are enrolled or not, right? We got to find this piece of paper, and like, for instance, I'm a quarter and my kids are an eighth, but because I can't prove they're an eighth on paper, they're out of the tribe, right? And so there's a certificate you need for that, right? And whether you find that or not, good luck. And so that was the beginning. We talked about the stereotypes. One of the more personal things for me was the gaming stuff. Eventually I'm going to have a history of Indian gaming course offered. I'm real excited about that. Maybe in the next year or two over at Cuyamaca or Grossmont. So the Indian gaming stuff for me is important because no one's ever really done it. And so that's why I did it. A lot of people I interviewed, historians, the reason why they became a historian is because no one was doing it. And that's why I did it, especially the gaming stuff, because I grew up in the gaming era from the beginning to the end. I was literally in the middle. And gaming started with, so what tribe? Who started gaming?
The Seminoles, right?
All right, Seminole. Good job, Glenn. Ding, ding, ding. I wish I could give out the candy canes or something. All right, yes. Right. And then who brought it to the West Coast first? So it started in Florida, right, in 1979. Then it was brought out to the West Coast first. And what tribe brought it out first?
Verona, right?
Verona. Right.
Verona?
Yeah, and to be honest, this is why I really believe I have like a mission in life, because no one knows this stuff. And it's like really fascinating. Books have been written about the Seminoles. I have one. It's called High Stakes. I'm going to use that for my course on gaming. But no one ever covered Verona, and it's a damn shame because that's history. You know, whether I was a part of Verona or not, maybe I was part of Sequan, I would still feel this kind of, I don't know, pressure, right, to get it out. And a lot of reasons why I know is because I interviewed the elders, right? So that's why. And then I was reading the books on gaming. So yeah, so our chairman went out to Seminoles, Joe Welch. He's a Venegas, and he brought back right when he got back, he voted it unanimous, 22-0. He showed up. So how many people went to tribal meetings back in the day, right? 22-0, unanimous. Voted to bring gaming. Rest is history. And then, but so here's an interesting thing though about San Diego County. Is it has the largest concentration of casinos in the country, right? Because we have the most reservations per county in the United States. Therefore, we would have the most casinos. So that's something that's interesting too. Then there's the potential
in the LA area.
Hmm?
Still, and I think Connecticut, are they still the most profitable or the most revenue?
So Foxwoods went bankrupt. They were Connecticut, Foxwoods, Pequot, and Pequots. They went bankrupt. A lot of that was the tribal council was doing these shadow programs over the management, and the tribal council ruined their business, right? And so in one tribal council can destroy your business, and that's why it's so important we don't elect incompetent officials, right? That think they know better than the management companies. And that's what happened at the Pequots. Is you'll get these, tribal council members who think they don't appreciate the value of the management company. They think they can do it, and then they'll run their business into the ground. And that's happened a couple other times too. But the Pequots, so that's kind of like a parable for management, for I don't know, a Greek tragedy of tribal councils and management companies. So it's important to realize the importance of management companies, but what are the negative impacts too? So everything has a yin and a yang, right? So the management companies, there's also a negative impact. And what would that impact be? What would the negative implications, especially if I'm a tribal member?
Money.
So money, yeah, they're expensive as hell. They take like half your profits sometimes, right? Yeah. So that's why natives don't want them, because they're like, oh, I can have that money. Why would I give it to you? And my cousin Hank Murphy at Sequan, he said exactly that when I interviewed him. Like, why are you guys giving all your money away when you could do it? And that's only part of the equation, though, And then the other one is that, as tribal members, we don't know anything about our business at all. Most of us know zero. I mean, and it's sad because we should know our business. We should know these things, and we should be trained, and we should be eventually, I believe, replace those non-native counterparts and with native counterparts. That should be the ultimate goal, if we can actually trust ourselves with ourselves. Because a lot of times we would rather, and this is what Duran said in his book, we would rather have someone else do it than us because we don't trust ourselves, our tribal members. So that's kind of a tangent. But anyway, so there's good and bad things of management companies. Just keep that one in mind. We said two of them. I'll leave the third one up for you. So the other one is diversity. So one of the things I talked about in my article was economic diversity. Who's the most diverse of the three tribes? So Brona Viejas and Sequan, and who's the least diverse? I know this is kind of advanced. I would take this question out in the future. So Brona is the least diverse. Sequan is the most diverse, but Sequan had some kind of bad luck with the Grand Hotel where they had a cracked slab. So they purchased the Grand Hotel and they had a cracked slab right off the bat, and they had to put millions and millions of dollars in the Grand Hotel. So it's financially been challenging, to say the least. And a lot of the factory outlet Viejas had struggled financially recently in recent years. So although Barona is the least diverse, those tribes that are more diverse haven't really had success outside of gaming in general. So there's a reason why we're not diverse, because nothing else would really work. I think we need to keep trying though, and get into, you know, some type of real estate, commercial real estate, do something other than gaming. So that diversity.
Those are the stats for the Kumeyaay. Do you know internationally which tribe is really successfully diverse?
So what I heard from Jamie LeBrake of Sequan is that there are tribes out there trying to get combine all of our incomes and get into ventures together, like commercial real estate. But nothing is really happening, and we're still trying to do that. Everyone's trying to, like, you know, dabbling in it. But again, it's got to run through the council, and you got to convince 550 people it's a good idea. So maybe they won't know a good idea when they see it, or a bad idea when they see it, because you have to have a level of experience to know what's good and bad investment. So it is extremely challenging. That diversity question is going to be really challenging, because when gaming started, there was only a couple of us, right, a handful, and now we quadrupled in size. So how can, like, you know, the United States, we can't vote on anything anymore. It's a stalemate. And so I think that's kind of where it's headed. So, but we do need to push forward and try to figure that. That's the most important question going in the future for us, is that diversity question. So yeah, we spent a lot of that. This will, I'm gonna leave. I'm not going through all the questions, so you're gonna have to figure some of these out. When the United States, so settler colonialism was a genocidal policy, right? So that was indigenous people's history of the United States. It was the settler colonialists of the Americans it's genocidal. So it's wiping people out. And what was the reason for that? What was the number one reason for that? Like the motive?
Just to take land, the manifest destiny, right? Just for.
Yes, definitely. So it was all about land. And one of the things too about, like, and probably Luis, you already know this probably, but the only thing really valuable in life is property and land. And because it's limited, right? Money, you can print money all you want. They'll find, you know, another gold mine down this, you know, but land is the only thing limited, and it's like housing is, you know, crazy right now, right? So if you want real wealth in life, own property, own a condo, start there. And that's something, you know, the founders talked about, the quote unquote founders. George Washington, he was obsessed with land. All those folks, and they were obsessed with acquiring land and then renting it out to people. And so that's the only real commodity in life, materialistically. Everything else, it doesn't compare to land. So that was the whole point of the United States. And it was a genocidal policy because you wiped out the natives to get that land. And that's how history should always frame the United States history. And the other thing is slavery. It's kind of on the test, but, you know, free labor has always been the cornerstone of every civilization. For example, Rome had 2 million slaves. Millions and millions of slaves built Rome, built the cities. They were the builders. They were the gladiators. They were the housemaids, house servants. And so United States carries on that legacy of the Western idea of slavery to the United States with African slavery. So if anyone ever challenges you, like, hey, what's this Black Lives Matter stuff about? What is all this? To say, well, it starts with slavery. And it goes back to the foundation of this country. And those foundations are still here. And those trees haven't been chopped down yet, right? It's a part of our society, this systemic racism. So that's the moral of the story in a nutshell, what the United States really is about. It's about free land and free labor. But Rome was Rome. We copied the Roman society. In fact, I believe every president has read the history of the Romans at one point. So what were the first settlers called? I kind of said it already. Meaning the occupants never were here. I just said it. I gave you the answer with rabbit ears or air quotes. So I'll leave that one for you.
Wait, I didn't hear you. Wait, what did you say?
Okay.
It kind of broke up.
Okay, the first settlers were given this title, which means that if there were never occupants who lived in America in the first place. So we say this all the time. We say this word all the time. But it has a negative.
Pioneers.
What's that?
Settlers and pioneers. I don't know. I can't remember what you actually had, but
Okay, yeah. So the first settlers were given this title, which means as if there had never been occupants in America before. So that the before is like they're the first, right?
first.
First. So
Pilgrim.
what would a word meaning that? We say it all the time in America. So-and-so was the,
Original.
yeah, okay.
Immigrant.
Hot? You're getting hot? It's, okay, it has,
Not the settlers, not the
we're in
pioneers.
charades now. We're in charades mode.
Yeah. Well, give it. You have to act out a little more.
It's a bottom of a house. All right, here's a house.
Foundation, but
All right, there you go.
founders. Founders.
Founders, right? So and that's what people. So when they say that the so-and-so founder, it's like there was no other history before, and that's something that America does without even knowing it. That they're not the founders. There were people here many years before that. They were the founders of but okay. I mean it's semantics, but it is kind of not correct. They weren't the first people there. That's
Ethan,
all.
what did the Kumeyaay? What was the Kumeyaay name for California before the Spanish?
So we didn't have a name for California. We knew
For here.
we knew where the mountains were in north. We knew like the vastness of the region. We knew because we had runners. We had traveled long distances. People come back, but we didn't really have a place for California.
What did you call the local area?
Well, we had villages. Right? So there was village sites. There was places where people lived, like the Quitsans would have that would be like where the Quitsans are. Like Kumeyaay meant where the people are on top of the cliff, overlooking the cliff. That's what Kumeyaay means. So basically it delineates where these people are on top of a cliff, overlooking, overlooking a cliff. So it just delineates like, I don't know, over there, right? Over the west folks by the cliff. It was real. Place names were almost different, in the way you thought. It's hard to explain, but I don't think they would even have a name beyond a person's clan's territory. You wouldn't have that would be the extent of it, like so and so. That's the Meadowweir clan territory. That's this clan's territory. That's where the Quitsans are. That's where the Mojave, the Cocopa, and I don't know. Maybe you would have like rivers and mountains, but you wouldn't have like an all-encompassing territorial identifier. No. But that is one of the harder things to find, by the way. There's even this village sites. So that is one of our biggest holes in Kumeyaay history, big time. Okay. All right. Okay. So the Sioux, the delegates what were the problems with the Treaty of Fort Laramie? Like, they were signing the treaty, and this is indicative of all treaties. What are some of the things that were in our reading that the treaty was problematic from the Native perspective? If you're a Lakota and you come, and there's this white dude and he's like, here, sign this treaty, and you sign it and you walk away, what were some of the things that happened? Probably. So right off the bat, they look at the treaty. What's the problem? Right from that spot.
They don't read.
They don't know how to read.
They had to.
Exactly, you're right.
And they had to trust what they were being told. And
yeah, someone had to explain it to them, right?
They would never have one person sign something.
Yeah, and also the other thing we talked a lot about is, instead of written documents, what did we have?
Oral traditions.
Oral tradition. So what you said was more important than what a piece of paper, right? So say the guy said something that wasn't on a piece of paper. Well, we were oral, so we were an oral tradition. So what you said meant more than the paper, right? So say the agent said something that wasn't on the treaty. Well, you said it anyways. So that was a binding document in a social agreement. So that's one of the things I think it's important when you ever talk about treaties is we didn't, they were problematic and in 20 different ways. And then as we talked about historical trauma, one of the things that pops up is so what is the literal meaning of psychology? If you translate psychology.
Study of the soul.
Study of the soul, right? So that's what it's all about. And in Native people, what I like about Duran is he uses his language in a Native way, which is soul. He uses these words that the elders would use, which is very spiritual in nature. And yeah, so that book kind of highlighted some of that. And what are the manifestations of the soul wound in your society as a consequence from all these things that have happened to Native people? What does the end result look like? What are some of the manifestations of the soul wound Duran talks about?
There's the alcoholism, right? Among some natives, the alcoholism problem.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And then that leads to what? What does that lead to? Well, that's only part of it, but alcoholism is a big part. But which leads to what happens? Suicide, right? Yeah. Domestic violence. Fighting within the family and the community, political infighting and violence. So you have all this fighting and dysfunction within the communities, within families, between husband and wife. So it goes to the very core of our society. And a lot of this, one of the main things that the government wanted to do was destroy the tribal family, because it wanted to destroy tribalism. And that's why my grandfather went to, boarding school, and my dad didn't have a father. My dad was an orphan. And when my dad had me, he didn't even know how to be a father, right? So he was a good father for where he came from, but he struggled, and then now I'm a father and I have a hard time with it. So a lot of this stuff is from the United States policy of destroying the family, and it worked. Right. And so one of the things that's cool for me when I read this stuff, I'm able to realize, that was the policy. My family was supposed to be broken. That's what the government wanted and did and succeeded in. So, it's really sad because this stuff repeats. Like my brother just got a divorce, and it's really sad. And, I'm seeing the cycle constantly repeat itself, and all this stuff is the soul wound, and it's the government's policy to do it. This was the government's intent, because here's the thing. These reformers really thought they could take the Indian out of us and replace it with something, right? American. But what happened is they just took something and nothing got replaced. And that's what happened. So, for me, a lot of my belief is this, it's a soul wound, so it has to be filled by something spiritual, something of the soul. And so, whatever that is, your religion, spirituality, that's the way to replace it. And community, it has to be community based. Hopefully, as a community, we can do it. And that's what Anthony Pico's trying to do right now in Viejas. We saw his videos, is he's trying to redo our ceremonies, new ceremonies, new revelations and stuff like that. And that's at the end of the day what we all need. And then what'll happen with, I think, Glenn, is if this takes place, you won't want to drink anymore. I think the drinking comes because you have an empty spot in your soul. And as you start filling that up with positivity, with spirituality, your urges will be different and more there'll always be a tendency, but I think it all boils down to the soul wound that manifests itself in so many ways. And it's a lot of us are very resilient and a lot of us aren't. So that's important to also say. It has to be dealt with in subsequent generations, or else it is, if it's not dealt with,
passed on to future generations.
Yes.
Inherited by the.
It definitely passes on, but what happens though as it goes on, according to Duran, as it goes on, it doesn't just carry on.
Sorry, I said deteriorates, but I think that was wrong.
Yeah, this is something I absolutely believe in, because I am the example of this question right here. So if you don't break the cycle, it doesn't just get passed on, but it's cumulative, and it grows exponentially. So say my grandfather was a 2, my dad would be a 4, and I would be an 8. So I'm not a 4, right? 2, 3, 4. It doesn't go up by 1. It goes up by 2s, like cumulative. So 2, 4, 8. And that's how I would explain it, because I lived it, and that's, I was way worse than my dad. My dad was pretty crazy. And then I was like way worse, at a much younger age. And I see that now, like we just buried my cousin up in La Jolla, Elvis, rest in peace. And, and that's what's happening to our new generation. It's accelerating probably because of modernity, right? And that's one of the things I find it's never been more important to break the cycle in your lifetime, or else your kids will be faced with more of a challenge. And that's, yeah.
I know you're saying Anthony's working on it.
Yeah.
I know that the Southern Indian Health Council, I was just looking at their webpage to see if they had anything specific to soul wound. There's plenty of things that might relate to it, but it doesn't have something called that, or historical trauma. I know that Santa Isabel has their own health clinic. Does every Kumeyaay tribe have a health clinic? And then the Southern California, or the Southern covers, I think 10 of them are a part of them. And where is that support system from the natives?
So a couple things are going on. Okay, first of all, there's not, like, I've been through the 12-step program, right? The first one is to admit, right?
Right.
Admit, and you're an alcoholic.
Was that through a native AA group, or was that?
So they have a native AA group. They do. They have one specifically, but my point is that first step has to take place, or else you can't start. And I don't think as a community we've actually admitted it, because what happens is, and will forever happen to me, is I'm always going to get pushback from saying stuff like this. every day, all day long, till the day I pass away, probably. Because people say, "Oh, we're not victims. There's no relax. There's no problem." You know, like
Right.
you're wrong, and we're fine. And then, but a lot of that is enablers. People don't want to change, and then people just, I don't know, coming from a different family, different perspective. So we have yet to have a consensus on this as a community, which is why I really like Anthony. For me, was like the first time I felt that, like, yeah, I have a voice because Anthony does, because no one listens to me, but they'll listen to Anthony. So the fact that Anthony's saying that, I felt like now I have a voice, because this is something I've been saying my whole life. And as I've interviewed people, elders, they're not really on the same page. Like, I'm in Christ. I've been in crisis mode since 16, you know, and I stayed on that mode because I feel like it's just a crisis up there and I want to address it. I don't want to lose my nephew and nieces and my cousins, you know, just in the same way I could have passed away 12 times. So we have yet to get that first step as a community. And that's why it's so important. The data is so important. The gravestones, what Anthony did on the gravestones of Viejas, because that's the first I've ever seen it. Because what you'll hear is this too. Pine Ridge, we can all agree Pine Ridge is one of the worst places to live in the United States, right? But then people say, oh, that's not us though. You know, we're not Pine Ridge. So that's why it's like, it's hard. It's just so hard to make any headway in this because you have resistance. And there's a couple reasons for that. And it's just a challenge. So that's why yeah.
Is Anthony starting an organization?
He already has, actually. It's called the Warrior, gosh dang it, something Warriors, Spiritual Warriors, something like that. It's eluding me, but yeah, he has, and they're the ones who put on the genocide conference at state.
Oh, okay.
The something Warriors, and they did that. So yeah, it's going. But here's what I think: like, we're losing so many people so fast, especially with fentanyl now. It's crazy how many people died on fentanyl in Verona. It's like one a month, it seems like, or every couple of months. And so maybe now people, it's like, you know, people will be like, it's undeniable, and that's something that maybe you got to hit the rock bottom before you can start to heal. So hopefully we are there. And then one of the things I like about Duran is he's real simple in a way. So to get to the root problem, how does he approach his clients? What does he start out with? What question or questions? Because he's a therapist for natives. So say he walks into a room, there's a native who has drinking problems, domestic violence. What would be the first question he would say to that native?
Wait, what was the question? It
So-
kind of cut off.
No, it's fine. So Edward Duran goes into a therapy session. There's a native there that's had issues with alcohol, violence, and how would he start off? Well, what would he say his first question or two, just to get the ball rolling?
Wait, so do they go through like the stereotypes of like alcoholism or anything like that, or no?
Yeah, so he would basically say this. It's just simple. Is where did you learn it from? And then your answer would be typically 90% of the time, where do we learn all our crap from? Our parents, right? Good and bad. And then he would say, well, where did your parents learn it from? Right? So, and then where did they learn it from? And then where did they learn it from? And this is a big way I was able to, before my dad passed away, him and I got close again, because I realized he learned it from someone else. right? He learned it from his dad not being there at all, right? So he learned it from the absence of his parents. And so that's how you trace historical trauma. So if you ever have anything wrong with you, kind of try to trace it back. Anxiety, depression, OCD, you probably got it from your grandma, your grandpa, or something else, and it probably had a historical precedence. So we all have this journey to take, every single one of us here. Native people are just a little bit more to do. So that's why I really like this course. And I've had a lot of like non-native students really, like have powerful moments in my course, because it's like, wow, and it's so simple yet so, sometimes the answer we're looking for is right in front of our face in life, and this is one of them. So yeah, and I think too it'll make you feel better about your parents when you're realizing that they learned it from someone. These are okay. And then what are the enrollment? So what's the lowest in blood degree of enrollment? So like I said, Barona's an 8th, right? What are some other fractions out there? That
16th,
16th, right?
at least.
And then after that,
Well, as you said the other day, they go to 164th. I don't recall.
yeah. So it'd be whatever we want though, right? So tribes determine that, and it gets down to 164th, which is like, what, your pinky? So it gets, I'm telling you, we need a great native comedian. I would have some great material for you, wherever you are. Okay. And I'm going to leave a couple of those cliffhangers because I'm not going to give them all to you. The Sioux, okay. Did the Sioux accept the loss of the Black Hills? Did they accept the payment?
Not to this day.
Not to this day. And it's a ton of money. And a lot of tribes have done that, actually. They denied the government's dirty money, because what they really wanted was land. They didn't want money. And that's what sucks about the United States Claim Commission, is they only offered money and not land. And what we really want is land. Okay, according to the Treaty of Fort Laramie, if a Sioux Indian committed a crime on the reservation, they would be tried in traditional court or U.S. court. So the Treaty of Fort Laramie talked about courts. And this was a beginning of infringement on our sovereignty, by the way.
Repeat the question, please.
Okay, so the Treaty of Fort Laramie, it talked about courts. And if something happened, if a Sioux Indian committed a crime, where were they tried at? In their old traditional council of elders or the United States courts?
Well, if it was a Sioux on Sioux crime, it would be dealt within the tribe, right?
No.
No.
So that's how it should be. But the Treaty of Fort Laramie was his first time where now the federal government had jurisdiction over tribes, and if you committed a crime, you had to be tried in a federal court. Okay, so yeah, and you would think it would be Sioux on Sioux crime, yeah. But then there's the Crow Dog decision where there's a little bit of gray area, which kind of said what you said, Glenn. But the Crow Dog thing was later. But initially, though, this was the first time where they basically said, you now have to be in our court, not yours. So the Treaty of Fort Laramie happened, and then what happened to break it? What happened? And I'm going to do this much better next year, so my bad. That's why I'm kind of giving you some of these. So what happened at Black Hills to break the treaty? Well, first of all, who broke it?
Well, of course, the federal government broke it.
Mm-hmm.
That crazy little thing called gold.
Yeah. So there was a ton of gold found in the Black Hills. And then the other thing was, that was our first Great Depression. So 1873, it started in Austria, it started in France, and a lot of it had like speculation. So the Europe crashed, and then the United States crashed in 1873, and this was a prelude to the Great Depression. And this was kind of all had to do with the Industrial Revolution, land speculation, all these things. Just basically money going wild. This is before regulation of anything, right? So if you were always in trouble, you start a war, you get gold, all that. And so I think, yeah, is it Grant? He couldn't, President Grant couldn't, basically, he didn't really care. So we needed to get out of this. Settlers started going in there. Then he sent Custer in there to protect those miners. There was like 10,000 miners there, and they were already there. And they sent Custer in to protect them, which in essence was a declaration of war. And that's how that started. So, all right. And then what we talked about this last week, what's kind of the whole goal of blood quantum? If you're the government, not for natives, a lot of natives don't realize this, but what is the whole point of blood quantum from a government perspective? What's the end result that they've always wanted?
Hey, Ethan, I think for the rest of this class, you should give points to anybody who answers, like extra credit.
I'm already giving you points, Luis.
Oh, you are? I'm not.
These are literally points, right? Giving you.
Well, yeah, I know, but right now, to getting people, like it's the game show. Dude.
Oh, it's a game show. Yeah.
You got 10 seconds to answer, and just go open up your quiz on campus. We can get to it.
I know. That's. I'll do that next time though. That is a good idea. Give points out.
I mean, as an educator, I'm not really in favor of that, but for engagement, I'm in favor of it. And since you're going to tell us anyway, might as well make it silly.
It's a worldwide pandemic. Come on now.
Right. We are in a pandemic. Speaking of that, I'm giving them more time to think, or go find it on the page. I put in the chat that today California announced that the UC Health System contact tracing app, it will now be made available. It's been in pilot stage since the beginning, to everyone in California, and I put the link there.
Oh yeah, that's a great idea.
You can it starts Thursday, but you can download it and set it up now. So
they forced the Koreans to do that, every one of them. Yeah,
a lot of countries have made people do it. So this is, it's a choice, but it's a choice that will help us get out of this mess. Another, like masks and hand and all the rest of it. It's just one more thing that's easy to do.
Thanks, Louise.
Yeah.
Thanks, Luis. Yeah, appreciate it. I'll look into that. So yeah, basically blood quantum came to erase tribes. That's the whole point. Because in 4 generations, so full, half, quarter, eighth, you're gone. And then after that, like I said, when La Posta, they were building that 8 freeway up there. They found one surviving member, my great aunt, Maria Benegas. Is that Maria or is that her daughter? But if they didn't find her, they would have took the reservation back. And they told my aunt that. If we don't find anyone, it's ours. And that's the whole point. We don't own the property. We just use it. And then when we're gone, it goes back to the original owner, right? The United States government. And that's the whole point of blood quantum. But again, it's like climate change. It's such a slow moving thing. We're like, it's not my problem. Until one day it will be. Okay, so when was the end of the frontier? Like the westward movements, the closing of the frontier. That's an easy one. Well, it's easy for me, I guess.
I'm gonna say it's not easy.
I've seen this so many times. I mean, come on.
You've watched this movie and read read multiple books many
I
times.
know this one.
If you're new to history, it's not.
So the closing of the frontier was 1893, right? That's when Frederick Jackson gave that speech about the end of the frontier, how the frontier defined the United States, Manifest Destiny realized. That's what that was all about. Manifest Destiny started in the beginning, 1845. It concluded at 1893, but it kept going to China and then to Mars and on and on. Manifest Destiny never ends. And if you saw President Trump's speech, State of the Union address, he said it right in the beginning. Our manifest destiny. You're going to hear this crap your whole life. Excuse my French. And it never ends, you know, and it is crap to an Indian because it's like that was a terrible ideology that ruined our lives. So, but from the United States perspective, it's this glorified thing, how we are divined, destined to take over the world. And the Chinese believe that, by the way. So I wonder who's going to win. According to
England believed it for a long time too.
Yeah, yeah.
They lost.
Yeah, our other old ancestors, huh, Luis? Yeah, exactly. But I mean, this is the stuff, you know, Romans talked about, the Greeks, right? It's as old as civilization. Islamic Empire got it too. According to Turner, the frontier thesis is the meeting point between civilization and this is the frontier, right? And it's pushing, civilization's coming this way, and what is it meeting? And the Romans talked about this. Julius Caesar. They used to call it barbarism.
I was going to say barbarians.
Barbarism, but the Americans called it savagery. Same thing. You know, this stuff is as old as Western civilization itself. Civilization takes over barbarism and savagery, and everyone's better off for it. That's this whole ideology. But in the beginning, the East Coast was mostly this culture before it started moving west. And this is something I didn't realize till I studied somewhere, and I realized all the street signs were the same as ours. But we have a new on ours. Theirs is, they don't have the new on theirs.
That place, what used to be the empire never set.
Yes, yeah, England. So America, this is something people don't realize enough. We are English. We're an English nation. Full on.
There's some French in there.
What's that?
There's a little French in there.
There's a little French in there. A little bit, yeah. A little bit of this, a little bit of that. I mean, English. But as it started moving, you know, we became something altogether different. The American was created as that movement west, where now we're like almost completely, we don't have much in common with the English now because of that westward movement and that influx of Native America. So I really like that because it shows how important Native people are to the American identity. And that, I think, is underappreciated. And our Constitution, all that is part of that mix. Okay. So they forced education on us, right? And yeah, these are kind of a bunch of softballs. So what did it mean? Now there's 9 more minutes left. So what did it mean when Gates, in Americanizing Indian speech, we said, you know, Indians take no thought for the morrow. But what was he mean?
Do what?
So Gates, in his speech on the Indian problem, he criticized saying Indians take no thought for the morrow, which implies
living for the day, seize the day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it was negative though.
Yeah.
So
it was part of, they have no progress.
Yeah.
Mentality, no advancement in the civilization, in the Western civilization concept of progress.
Yeah, like we don't think about or plan for the future. That's what a lot of like Western people have said about natives. We don't think about or plan for the future. We just live in the now. which is pretty awesome. Isn't that what we're all trying to do now? Now we're trying to do that.
That's the whole point now.
Yeah, I mean, all I do is think about the damn future, and I'm not even in the moment. But these policymakers criticize natives for that. They don't think about tomorrow or plan for tomorrow, because we didn't really have to, you know. And how cool would that be, to not think about too far into the future? Don't get me wrong, we thought about the seasons, you know, what's coming up, how we're going to plant and etc. But beyond that, we didn't have to. Okay, so General George Armstrong Custer brought this in his pocket into battle. I love this question.
I forget this one. He was such a jerk. What was
Yeah.
he have in his pocket?
But
I'm a photographer. He must have had a photo of somebody. Let's see, it was what year was it?
So this is 1876.
Yeah.
So he brought his toothbrush into battle.
All right. He was,
Ding, ding, ding.
He was obsessive.
Point for me. That's point for me. Okay, and Little Bighorn is the name of a what? What is Little Bighorn a name of? A man? Little big man? No, I'm just joking. Mountain? Was Little Bighorn a mountain? A lake? What's that?
A river?
A river, right.
It was?
So Little Bighorn was where because the Sioux were always on a river, right? It had to be. And they were on that river that day. I think maybe the confluence of the river. And yeah, so Little Bighorn is the river. The Lakota called it the greasy grass battle. The Western terminology was Little Bighorn. And so, okay, 1876 was the Battle of Little Bighorn. What was going on at this time, though? We talked about the Great Depression, the first Great Depression, but it was also the celebration of something, 1876. So this had a lot of meaning. The Battle of Little Bighorn and Gettysburg are like the two most important battles in the United States history at that moment, besides the revolution, initial revolution. But as a country, so you have Gettysburg, the Civil War, and then you have the Battle of Little Bighorn. And what was going on in 1876? The country was celebrating something.
Centennial, right?
The centennial, yeah. So we were, it's this moment in history where we were celebrating the creation of our great country, right? Defeating the Brits. And then we got our ass kicked by the natives in the plains, right? Custer, he was this great Gettysburg general. Custer was. He was famous. He was a young man during Gettysburg. He was in his 40s at Little Bighorn. He was this real popular. Part of the reason why Custer was so popular, he wrote all these articles to newspapers. And so he promoted himself. And he died as we were celebrating the 100-year anniversary, the centennial. So the Battle of Little Bighorn is this huge, huge deal. Part of the reason why it was on that year where we were supposed to be this incredible, untouchable nation. So we are almost there. Okay, 4 more minutes. The massacre that I'm. So then there was the massacre at Wounded Knee. I don't know if we covered this too much, but Little Bighorn was 1876. Then about 14 years later, there was a massacre at Wounded Knee, 1890. And they were doing the ghost dance. They were on the reservation. They were protesting the reservation system by leaving the reservation, by refusing annuities, and by dancing, going back to their traditional ways. And they were just dancing. So you outlawed dancing, they outlawed it, and they did it anyways. And then they were massacred for it. And that's what the Wounded Knee Massacre is they went to their teepees, their tents, and they found guns, they weren't supposed to have. And then it was seen as, some see it was as revenge because this cavalry did it. What cavalry participated in the Wounded Knee Massacre?
Was it the 7th Regiment?
The 7th Cavalry.
7th Cavalry.
Yeah, so the same cavalry who got their ass kicked at Little Bighorn, they then massacre these folks in the Wounded Knee Massacre as revenge. And they even say too, as they're massacring women and children, this is for Custer, right? This is for Custer. And then they were awarded 20 medals of honor, right? So this is more medals of honor than given out the entire Afghan 9/11 after 9/11. I think I think less than 20 medals of honor were given out this whole war after 9/11, but 20 are awarded for this massacre, which shows just really just a deplorable thing from the ground up, the top down, the Senate, because they're the one that does this, right? The government, they award these Medal of Honors, and there's a thing called Remove the Stain Act, and they're trying to take these back. So there's legislation being pushed forth in the House recent years. I'm not sure that'll ever happen, right? And this is kind of that point where we did talk about changing curriculum and changing the United States, and this is part of it. We got to take these medals out from these folks who did nothing but slaughter women and children, and maybe a couple soldiers, right? Okay. So what are the 3 reasons Native Americans chose to relocate to urban population centers? Hope for unemployment. I got that wrong last time. So the 3 reasons, because they had the Relocation Act after the Termination Act, you have the Relocation Act too. So this is 1960s. And why did natives move to the city? Like my Uncle John and my aunt met in San Francisco during this time. That's where my cousins come from, with the Relocation Act. And what were some reasons why you would relocate?
Was it because they promised the better like hot water, like better things, and then that's when some of them stayed at the reservations too, because they didn't want to buy into it? Was it that, like, people stayed at the reservations and they went to the lands because they wanted like hot water and stuff? They're promised things that wasn't
on the reservation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the big one is, for us, has always been employment. That's the number 1. Education is number 2, maybe number 3, and then like you said, Jordan, it would be hot water, running water, electricity. A lot of reservations didn't have those for a long time. It was fairly recent. This electricity is new, that was brought to Campo in the 70s, for instance. They didn't have electricity. And so, all right. And there is, okay, so the occupation of Alcatraz happened because of a stipulation in this treaty. So there was a treaty that said if any land that's federal is unused, it reverts back to Native Americans. And this is in the treaty of, it was a Lakota woman. Hint, hint. Lakota.
Wait, you said something about color? Wait, what happened?
So there's a treaty. So the occupation of Alcatraz happened because of a treaty. There was a stipulation in a certain treaty that when the federal land was no longer used, it went back to tribal land. This is in the Treaty of Fort Laramie. So the Treaty of Fort Laramie said, if a federal property is not being used, it reverts back to Native Americans. And this Lakota woman, that's why they occupied Alcatraz. And my dad was there in 1969, and they were trying to take it back using the treaty. So natives have always resisted, and called the bluff of the U.S. and the occupation of Alcatraz was this great movement in the beginning. But a lot, and the occupation of Alcatraz happened because of the relocated natives in the 60s. They were all there. So now they're getting educated, they're getting smart, and now they're occupying Alcatraz using these old treaties, the Treaty of Fort Laramie. But the problem with this is native people they never really fit in the urban centers because they didn't have Western values, like the acquisition of material goods. They didn't just have a desire to assimilate, and they didn't have the desire for self-reliance, independence. So all these things that are necessary to thrive in an urban environment were not part of Native Americans' DNA. So it was very problematic. A lot of these natives ended up on Skid Row, and doing really, really homeless and, at drug addicts and alcoholics. And so this relocation program was an absolute failure for the most part, because the government promised all these things and it never happened. And then you had to deal with increased racism and all those other things. And my aunt and my uncle were part of this. My uncle John came from Pine Ridge, was relocated to the Bay Area. It describes, okay. All right, I'm gonna was a band. So, okay, we talked about this with the dancing. So the BIA basically created these were crimes. So sun dancing was a crime, honoring ceremonies, funeral rites. They made all of our religion a crime. The BIA did. And I think people don't realize this was in the 1880s. So this is a prelude up to the Wounded Knee Massacre in 1890. So by the 1880s, the government started basically making all these things a crime because they were worried about our organization and our detribalization being incomplete and the assimilation. And so it was literally illegal to practice our religion. And so that's why a lot of us converted into Christianity or whatever, and we hid our beliefs, like the Kumeyaay did, for instance. We put our traditions in a Christian box, if you will. Our history is the future. So the ghost dance, it was this thing. All right, only got 2 more questions. The ghost dance movement was, but what was not an aspect of the ghost dance movement? Basically, moral of the story is it wasn't violent. So just remember that. So the ghost dance was this movement where Sitting Bull and everyone, after the Battle of Little Bighorn, they were on the reservation, right? And they withdrew from reservation life. They just were dancing. But they weren't hurting anyone. Okay, so just remember that. The ghost dance it didn't hurt no non-white folks, nothing. So that Wounded Knee Massacre was totally, it had no reason for it. And because they weren't really hurting non-native people. Okay, so yeah, I think that should be it. I think I'm gonna leave this. I'll leave this recording on the YouTube video channel, and you can watch it right before you take the tests. The test will be on Thursday. Thursday, I think, available from Thursday to Saturday. I would just do it and get it over with. I left it available till Saturday. I'm going to be giving grades out on Sunday. You should have your grades by Sunday. So if you want to do any more extra credit, whatever, you want to pad your grade. Everyone's doing well for the most part. I would just maybe watch this movie or this video before you take the test on Thursday. So I hope you do well. I am pulling for all of you. This is challenging times, and I really wanted this to be a good experience till the very end. And finals, it can be hard right now, especially. They're hard in any time. So I'm hoping this final is not very hard for you. I gave you basically 30 of the 50 questions. So you should do well. And if you are worried again, just give me an extra credit, and then you'll be there. So any questions before I sign off and say thank you for coming? I'll do my last little bit. All right. I hate to say goodbye.
Thank you for teaching.
Thanks, Luis. Thanks for coming. I don't know what I would have done without you, Luis. The only
Well, I
one.
gotta say, I'd like to see other people. I wonder if they would just like flick themselves. Well, actually, I'm more interested. Well, first of all, Glenn, are you Pete? Are you two different people?
No, Glenn is not Pete.
Okay, you sound like Pete.
Glenn, are you Pete?
I know that you could log in with different names. I have a couple of accounts. But I'm more interested if you'd put in the chat, why do none of you show your face? I mean, I'm the old one. I'm not the young, hip, like the rest of you probably. So, you know.
I mean, I had no idea. I had no idea how this semester would turn out. I just didn't want, again, you know, I know some people got kids at home, some, you know, who knows what the hell's going on at home. So I didn't want to make that a requirement.
Right, yeah.
I didn't know.
As somebody who's sitting there talking, is it not nicer for you to see a few people who might be actually there as part of it?
Without a doubt. Yeah. I mean, if not, I'm just looking at myself. Right.
Right.
So it's one of those things where that was, I didn't know what to expect, and it is challenging. So I just wanted to, my whole goal with this whole semester was to be accommodating to the students and see what happens. But, you know, maybe next semester I will do some of that mandatory, you know, camera, you know, someone's got to be here. Because, you know what happened with Grossmont? They said, I don't even have to do this.
Yeah.
Grossmont's different. So my Cuyamaca class, they didn't say that. Grossmont, I could have done all online, no lecture at all. So I was like, I was kind of weird.
What they're calling distance learning.
Calling distance learning, yeah.
There's a lot
and I'm like, I don't know how to teach like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was kind of this in between where I'm like, like whatever happens, you know, if I could just literally record myself for an hour and put it on YouTube, I guess. But it's one of those things where this was my first time teaching online, so I'll make some adjustments, big time.
Well, I don't know. Maybe the rest of the students can say, but for me, what makes a class really helps you learn is if you get engaged with it emotionally and cognitively and socially, and you can't do that in the same. You can do it cognitively through distance learning, but it's a lot harder the other ways. And you know, it's just so. As an old educator, past educator, you know, it's a concern to me because I know that a lot of places are going to go more distance learning, and maybe that's what the young students of today will prefer. But I think it's missing some components that you can't get without being either live here or present in a classroom. So
yeah, I mean, here's what I felt about that is I'll be honest, I wouldn't have became a teacher if I did online, my degree online. I wouldn't have wanted to, because this is so the most important thing for me is that face-to-face personal contact where you get to know the professor and the students in a space. And so that being said, though, I was pleasantly surprised with the online. I liked it more than I thought, but my expectations were not very high to begin with. But yeah, it was one of those things where I'm like, I probably wouldn't have became a teacher if I did my degree online. So, but everyone's different, and I understand, I appreciate that. And if you got to get your degree online, do it. But it's not, to me, you're missing so much.
A lot of students may not stay students if that's, especially if you're an 18, 19-year-old, that's all you're going to know right now. You may go, this is no.
I'm not going to do this for 4 years.
So we might lose a lot of educated, potentially educated people.
Yeah. I mean, we're social beings, right? All of us. And this isn't really social. It's in a way it's antisocial to some extent. And it's awesome though during a pandemic. Thank God we got this technology. You know what I'm saying? But I'm the glass half full, and that's how I've looked at it. But I'm all, I don't know if I can keep doing this. You know what I mean? And
It's hard. And so to be a student doing 5 classes, to be a 15-unit full-time student, I think it would be really, really hard.
yeah, my nephew's doing it at UCLA, and he's like, he's going mad.
Yeah.
Because he's on Zoom all day long at UCLA. It's UCLA. You know what I mean? Like, that's not messing around. And it's demoralized. It's not demoralized. That's the wrong word. I can't think of the right word. But it's really really hard for him to do it.
So I have a totally separate question if you have another minute.
Yeah.
Does the Kumeyaay College, which I know this class isn't offered through Kumeyaay, but the others are, does it have a scholarship program that's already in place?
It has a scholarship to non-gaming Kumeyaay. And I'm not sure how honestly you do with the financials and then that are projected into the future. Kumeyaay College will be lucky to stay open.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. So who manages?
And a lot of charity type organizations are probably going to go under. Like, museums, they're gonna fold, and it's going to be challenging.
Do you know who manages the Kumeyaay scholarship?
No, I don't. I do not. I could put you in contact if you want.
Yeah, I would appreciate that. Did Lori get replaced?
Yeah, Lori retired.
Did someone replace her? Because
Amanda, but she doesn't really know the ropes yet. Yeah, so.
Good. Yeah. Well, I hope the college stays intact because it.
Yeah. Well, last I heard, the History Center, for example, the San Diego History Center, I talked to Bill in March, and he said he had 8 months worth of, less than a year worth of operating costs, and that's almost gone by now, right? So I'm like, maybe it's one of those things where a lot of charities are gonna, nonprofits are gonna go under big time because they're not gonna get money from people who are struggling, like gaming, the casino. Cuyamaca's main source of income, the college, is gaming tribes. You think we're going to give any money to them right now? No way. And so it's one of those things where I hope.
Although you have a state mandate that you have to give away a certain percentage, right?
Yeah, that's true. It's one of those things where, but we also have our own charities that we all want to deal with. So who's
different? You can give it somewhere else.
We've never given money to Cuyamaca yet, community college.
Oh, you don't?
Not really. Like the first monies they got really was when I came there and I started, asking for, 10, 15, something, and I was able, but that was the first money Barone ever gave them at all. And that was for like the graduation ceremony. So they came in, but I'm not, it's such a different world now. And it's, operating costs. We're kind of like where San Diego History Center is, where we got about a year of money, and I think a lot of nonprofits are like that. You got about a year or less, and this pandemic's going to go for a year, and we're going to see the closures start happening, like starting now, January, February, March, and our history centers, our museums, our culture centers, man, they're so important, and let's just hope that they stay open.
My last comment. I don't know if you watch Craft in America on PBS, but because you've talked about this a bit about democracy and perspective, there's a good one. It's episode 12, I think, on the latest season. They're about craftspeople, but this one is about democracy and the role of crafts. And there's a special piece of it of African American, but also Native American. So it's like a 10-minute clip, but it's a lovely, lovely piece.
Nice.
Talk about the democracy, that contributions from the Native Americans.
Great. Crafts on KPBS?
KPBS. Well, it's PBS. It's
okay.
PBS.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right. Awesome.
All right. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Luis.
Happy holidays, everyone.
I mean, I just, hang in there, everyone. Positivity is the most important thing right now. Don't watch the news too much. If it hurts your mental capacity, put on a comedy. Go exercise, get outside, go, do something positive. And I just hope everyone does well during these next 3 months. They're going to be challenging. But hang in there and keep pursuing your education. And Thursday, you'll have a chance to do the final. And I hope everyone does well. Thank you for letting me teach you, and thank you for taking this course. And I will miss your screens. No, I was joking. I was being facetious. No, I will miss everyone though, and I have a wonderful, wonderful holiday.
Thanks, Coach. Good luck, everyone.
Right on, Glenn. See you, man.
Yep.
Bye, Luis.